Hi, everyone. Welcome, Regis Schultz, CEO of JD Group, JD Sports. It's such a pleasure to be here with you. Thanks for accepting our invite.
Thank you for your invitation.
So you have a lot of experience. You're a veteran in the retail sector. You worked for some of the top French retailers, including Darty, Castorama, Monoprix. Of course, you worked for Pernod Ricard earlier. You worked in the Middle East for Al-Futtaim, and now you run JD Sports, which is, of course, an authority in the sports fashion industry. Just for the benefit of everyone, we're talking about a 13 billion company headquartered in Manchester, 3,500 stores all over the world, 5 continents, presence, of course, in a couple of countries in Africa as well, which is the latest continent that you have approached. 38 plus countries in total. I mean, it's big, it's huge. I can only imagine the complexity. Being a CEO myself and running a company that is spread in 4 offices, I can only imagine what does it mean to be in 38 countries. So I guess the very first question for you is how hard it is to run a company in such a complex environment, considering different maturity stages, different, I would say also digital alphabetization in the different audiences, in the different markets, which makes your omnichannel or multi-channel, we'll talk more about this difference in a second, strategy harder, because you cannot rely necessarily on the same, again, alphabetization, on the same habit, or the degree is different. And so how hard it is running such a complex organization in a context in which change is the only constant, and it happens at the speed of an algorithm, and the world is volatile, complex, ambiguous, as we know. How hard is it? It is.
I think that it is hard when you do different things. In our case, we are running shop. We are shopkeeper, and so wherever it is in the world, it's about shop, it's about customer, it's about product, it's about price, and I think that where it's getting complex in our industry is that when people are starting to lose what is our, it's all about your product, price, service. And if you go back to that, it applies across the world, it applies everywhere. The answer is not the same, but your job as a CEO of a group is to ask the right question, is not to answer, and is to have the right people to answer. So, this job is very hard if you don't have the right people. If you have the right people, and if you simplify the question and not trying to overcomplexify, when business is going wrong is when we try to overcomplexify what is retail. And retail is about having the right product at the right price with the right service. And if you do that, frankly, you do a great job. If you start to want to be someone else, you start to say, well, let's integrate the brand, let's integrate that, let's try to build that. That's where you get complex. But if you go back to the essence of retail, which is to really have a shop and to have a product that you're offering to the consumer at the right price with the right service, it makes the job simple.
I'm glad to hear that. You've said at least 3 things that I strongly agree with. First one, of course, I agree on the simplification and the 4 Ps, because of course my co-author Philip Kotler popularized the 4 Ps. So if you say we need to go back there, I'm with you, and he will be very happy to hear that. I do agree 100% that the job of CEO is to find the right people, to delegate, and to let them do what they're good at, and perhaps they're even better than the CEO in many cases, if it's the work. I'm a big fan of this idea that the CEOs should focus. There's a nice way of saying it: only do what only you can do. I think it's very powerful. A CEO should only do what only the CEO can do, and everything else should be delegated to people who are better equipped to do it. So I totally agree with that. To build on what you're saying and to ask you the next question, considering that we want to simplify, we want to go back to the roots, perhaps considering that the right question is not what else can we make and sell, but is what else can we do for the customer? How can we make the product available to the customer in a simpler way, in a better way? How different is, from the recent past, in your experience, the concept of the right place? So in the past, we used to say that the three main rules of retail were location, location, location. Now, the number of touch points is huge. There is a lot of fragmentation. People can buy in many different touch points, including social networks, of course, the e-commerce, your e-commerce, brands e-commerce, someone else e-commerce, and so on. How important is the location? And by location, I mean brick and mortar, of course, in such a context.
Yeah, I will turn it differently. I don't think that has not changed. So location, location. What has changed in the industry I joined 20 or 30 years ago is that you have now a new tool, which is a digital, and and you need to integrate that in what you do. So I will not say, so all the rest stays the same. So nothing has changed, and digital is just one more way to deliver a service to the consumer, one more way to communicate with the consumer that you need to take into account. So what I'm saying is not saying digital doesn't impact my business. I've seen that in the past. But at the same moment, it doesn't impact what you need to do on your product, what you need to do on your location, what you need to do on your price and on your service. It's just that you need to integrate this part of those. So it doesn't change the basic of what we do, which is to sell the right product at the right price with the right service. It just makes that you can do it in a different way. And it doesn't change the location, because it is another way to sell it. But the key location, Champs-Élysées was Champs-Élysées 20 years ago, it's still Champs-Élysées today. And it's even worse. I think the fact that the digital has taken such a place, Champs-Élysées is even more important than it was yesterday. What has disappeared is perhaps the number 3 or number 5 location, because that's where, but the key location are the key location of yesterday, depending on how they change physically. But digital has even reinforced such the importance of the 4 pillar, because it gives even more scrutiny, more understanding of that. So for me, it has changed nothing to what we do as a living. It just put much more emphasis on those points and much more important on that, and to integrate that at a global level with a different way of looking at it. So it just re-asks the same question in a different way, but it's all about that. The winner is always the one that has the right product at the right price with the right service. It changed nothing at all. It's just the way you express, and if you take a product, yesterday it was, and I remember being a French retailer, it was all about being the leader of your catchment area. Don't care about the market, just look at the catchment area. All the retail, especially the Latin, it was all about I want the best store in the catchment area. I don't care about more global, because it doesn't matter. And that was true. This is no more true. So product is now, what changed is that in the past, the benchmark was your 20 minutes or your catchment area. Now it is the world, because with a mobile, you can see everything across the world. So you need to understand that and to take that into your strategy. Price, the same. We were all looking at, I remember doing that, going into the next door.
And, with to check the competitors, taking notes.
And changing on the Saturday morning, because I knew that the guy was coming on the Friday. So I'm putting the price up on Friday night for the guys to have the wrong price, and Saturday changing the price. And I was really, I'm winning my area. And guess what? What the guys on the net today are doing? Exactly that, but in a different scale, different world. So,
different tools,
but they are doing exactly what I was doing with my notebook, going through all my catchment area. But I was doing that with my car and going across, or even on the retail park. Now my people are doing that on an algorithm for the full world, and are calculating how much I can charge. It's the same.
Yeah. Well, I agree, and it's a fascinating way to describe it. The last time we met, we were in Paris, in your point of sale on the Champs-Élysées that you have just mentioned. And it's probably one of the most iconic, or the most iconic store that you have. And you describe the ritual, how to welcome the client, how to how to make them feel more than anything else, and how they would experience the product or the different brands and the categories, and the way you offer and you structure and the layout and women, men, and what is happening there. And I probably I already know the answer based on what you've said, but we argue in the book that on the one hand, it is absolutely true. Let's go back to the basics. We still do the same job. At the same time, we argue that this word is no longer only phygital, so physical and digital. We argue that there is a third dimension, which is the virtual world. Now, I probably already know the answer. It probably is yet another tool in your words. However, what I've noticed is that, for example, my son, he's 10 years old, less actually. And some time ago, he asked me to buy a BMW for him. Of course, I was surprised, and I said, "Hey, this is a big ask. What do you mean?" He said, "No, it's not a big ask. It's less than $10." And then I realized that he wanted a BMW for his avatar on Fortnite, so a video game, virtual world. And it made me think, because the reality is that there is a new generation of consumers that is familiarizing with brands, so building an emotional connection with brands in a virtual world before they have the time to build the same emotional connection in the physical world and in the digital world. So basically, my son never entered a dealership of BMW and never configured a car on the website. So he has zero experience with the brand in the virtual and real or physical worlds, and he already has an experience in the virtual world. So I guess the question is, if we assume that these are only tools, changing, of course, the balance of things, but these are tools, what is the next best action for a customer that is building a relationship with your brand or with your products as an avatar before then as a human being? What is the future? You serve many young customers, so I'm sure you have a privileged perspective on this.
Yeah, I think that COVID has demonstrated that the physical interaction is something that, because we had the ultimate crash test for retail through COVID, because at that moment, the store didn't exist at that moment. So all the barrier to go to the web, to go to this world, disappear, because you have no choice, and everyone's done it. And guess what? When store reopened, everyone went back to store, and that was not a given. I think that at that time, this world could have disappeared, because you start to have new habits. We know changing human habit takes time, so that's why evolution of new things takes time. It's just because we are lazy as doing something different. But when we start something, usually we continue, and if we come back, it's because we prefer the other one. That it's no more by habits, and it's no more by being lazy. And 100% of consumer came back. So your son is doing that in this virtual world. At the same moment, I think human are, and we have seen how much it has damaged mental health, the fact that you didn't have human interaction being with the other one. So we play, we are, it's called retail therapy, but I think we are a social animal, and I don't think we live well in a world where we don't socialize. And I think that, so the virtual world is doing something, but I think that you see all the problem of mental health is coming from being only on virtual. So I think that as an individual, as a human being, we need social interaction, and we need place to do that. And retail is one of the most easier place to do that. And that's why, yes, this will happen. Like the web is what, 20% of the business, 25%. And it's very interesting through COVID, we now understand that it's likely to stay there between 20 to 30, not going for. There is a place for virtual, but I think that, what this place will be, I think that we are human are a social animal, and this social animal need place to socialize, and that's what we're doing for living, and that's why we have a powerful model.
And that's why probably brick and mortar is here to stay. I mean, different balance, different numbers, as you said,
Yeah,
it's here to stay.
And different way to do it, more F&B, more entertainment, less retail as that. That's what you see in mall, how it evolved and all that stuff. But the key thing that there is a place where everyone can come and can socialize, that is critical. Retail is a way to do that. Perhaps one day we say retail is no more doing. If retail continue to do that, there is a future. If we stop to do that, there is no future. So we need to think about that way. But I think the humanity will disappear the day that we will stop to interact with each other.
I love it. Love it. To build on this, because this is very interesting. Omnichannel or multichannel or optichannel, right? The different buzzwords, keywords, but the bottom line is I've spent the last 10 years discussing and debating this topic with CEOs from all over the world. And I came to the conclusion that I tend to say that omnichannel is like sex for teenagers. Everybody talks about it. Everybody thinks that the others are doing it, but no one is actually doing it well. And the simple reason is that it's very hard. The balance changes every time, geographies are different, touch points keep changing, and the number of people, the resources, the money that you need to be present and to master every single channel is such that in many cases, many brands and retailers realize that it's probably more efficient to have a presence in the most strategic channels as opposed to try to be everywhere and try to be relevant for everyone at the same time. Others are quite successful. They think they can do it. They think they are actually mastering the channels and they are managing the seamless journey of the customer. Others push the concept even forward. And they say, for me, omnichannel is not only what I do for my customer in my store for my brand, but it's also linked to the location vis-a-vis the location of complementary stores. So if you realize that every time that there is a JD store next to a Decathlon, I'm just making this up, that is omnichannel because it's the same shopping expedition. The customer might find interesting going to both stores. And if you next to the other, you're still doing some sort of omnichannel strategy because you are complementing the journey of the customer and you're serving the customer the better way. So many things on the table, so many different visions, so many different views. What is your take on this? What is omni channel for JD and of course for Regis in particular?
I think that, I get this question from analysts around, the penetration of omnichannel sales. And I was always giving this number, 90%. And they look at me, no, you don't do 90% of your sale on digital. I say, no, I'm doing 90%. And say, no, it's not possible. You mentioned 15 at that time, that was 15, 20%. I say, no, 90%. Say, why are you saying 90%? 90% of my customer will go online at one point of time of the buying trip. And at the same moment, 90% of my customer will go offline to buy. So the reality is that it's one, and I think that the more you can create as one, and for sure, I'm seeing like, but it's your window. It's like and all customers go online, so you need to make sure that you represent yourself the way you want to be. So, and to your point, which I think you want to be the king of that, you want to be something different. It's just that you need to understand that customer will go there and will look at it, and how much you want to do about it is your strategy. It's a commercial strategy. It's the same, some retailers would like to go to the Champs-Élysées. Some say it's too expensive. I prefer to give the money to the consumer in the price. Some say so. For me, it's the same part of your strategy. It should be part of your strategy. It is 90% of your customer goes there, and the way you express yourself after is linked to what you want to be famous for on product, price, and service. And some would like to offer plenty of service online. Some really restrict. Primark as say I'm only doing click and collect, but at least I'm showing up on that, and I'm saying this is not the way I would like to interact with you. I would like to interact in store. So I'm saying something to the consumer. I'm expressing something to the consumer. Some other, as you say, will do, I want to be like a pure player because that's what I want. Okay, there is a price to do that. But what you need is to have a strategy that includes that. And these strategies need, and it cannot be only tactical. So you need to have a strategy around what you want to say in terms of product, in terms of price, and in terms of service. And I've been in Darty, and I was one of the first to open a marketplace, which is now very successful, because at that time I was feeling that was the right things. And with JD, we don't have a marketplace, and I'm not pushing for it for other reason, because that's the way so there is no one.
Size fits all. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. People try to have the same answer, saying there is one answer. There is not. You need to include digital in your strategy, because that is 90% of your customer going there, as you need to include your store and to say what you want to stand for and what is your strategy, what are you doing. But at the same moment, what you do there, I think there is no good and bad answer. It's a global answer. And if you look only by the fact that, oh, I'm successful digitally, but if you are not successful on in your store, it doesn't add value, vice versa. So it needs to be both, and because that's the way it should play.
Yeah, before I ask you the last question, I want to iterate this point. I think it's very important. Many leaders, many managers all over the world tend to do what you're sort of explaining, but not necessarily because they have a clear strategy, but just because they keep saying, yeah, come on, 85% of my customers will end up buying in store, so I keep doing what I've always done. That's wrong. What you're explaining is different. You can end up doing what you've been doing forever. However, you need to consider your overall strategy. You need to consider what competitors are doing. You need to consider what your customers want. You need to include digital and potentially virtual in the equation, and then you decide. And then it's your strategy. The strategy is a trade-off. You need to have the full picture, and then you decide, as opposed to, let's keep doing things like always in the past, and it will work. I totally agree, and it's a great point. Thank you for that. Last question.
Just on this point, I think the only thing I'm sure is that if you start from store, if you are omnichannel, I'm sure don't try to be a pure player. You will lose, because those guys, they are doing only that for living. You will not win. So you need to have that's the only thing I will say. If you are,
that's a great tip.
If you are a brick and mortar and you want to be someone else, just be someone else, but don't be a brick and mortar. You will never.
There is no room for the hybrid.
There is. So the reality is that you need, after that, within this omnichannel world, what you do and what you don't do, that's your decision, and they can be good strategy. But on the key part, which is don't try to be, and that impacts JD a little bit, because they wanted to be a pure player, and they built that. The only big mistake you can make is to say, I will set up digital as one company in the company, and I will say, you need to fight with Amazon and those guys, and I have the store on the other. That will not work. That I know will not work. After that, everything that you do in this space of omnichannel, there is no good and bad things, but you need to have, as you say, a strategy for that. It's not about saying, I ignore it, I don't see it, I don't include it. No, you include it. You include the store that is next door in your catchment area, the store that you compete. You include that. And I think the other advice, don't try to be someone that you are not, because those guys are 10 years behind, and they have more money to do that, and they do that for a living. So doing the same, I learn in sport, you play on your strengths. Don't try to compensate your weakness. So don't see digital as, I'm weak, I need to do something about it. It will use a lot of money, a lot of energy. Just say, I'm strong in store, and I need to realize that now there is a new media, a new way to do business, which is digital. How I integrate that in my mix? How I integrate that in my strategy? It's not about trying to be someone that you are not.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And it's way more expensive and harder to go from I'm not good to average than it's to go from good to great. So let's double down on our strength.
Yeah, I learned in sport. You win playing.
Sport is the same. You're right.
You don't, trying to work on your weakness, it just make you a little bit better.
Average. Yeah. I totally agree. Last question. This is maybe your final advice or final tip for retailers out there. In the book, we wrote this chapter called "The Perfect Storm," and basically we say that it's hard to be a retailer today, which makes you even more successful considering this complexity and considering how well you are performing. And the reason being is that there is this, again, perfect storm, this combination of unfavorable conditions. And we include the rising operational costs. We include the debt accumulated by some retailers during COVID. We include, because stores were shut down, as you have recalled. We include this cocktail of recession and high interest rates in some countries. At least we include the fact that there is a different work-life balance, or people tend to work slightly more from home than in the past, at least in some countries. In other countries, they're going back to 4 or even 5 days, but it's different balance. It's different, the different number of people walking on the high street or going to a shopping center, or maybe more in suburbs for some reason. But there is a lack of personnel. Not many young people want to work 5 or 6 days a week. The different times they prefer to do something else, so they have the weekend, and so on and so forth. So a number of reasons. Of course, they are not all relevant, and it depends on the geography, it depends on the sector. I just want to ask you, do you believe this is the harder time to be a retailer? Do you believe this perfect storm is actually happening? Or, as you've said before, it's still the same, variables keep changing, this job has always been more or less hard, never been easy, and it's all about adapting to the situation? Or do you believe that this is a particularly tough time for some reason?
I think life is hard and good, and it's always, and I think that it makes our life exciting and to overcome challenge. So no, I don't think it's, it is what it is, and I think that I don't feel it's hard. We have been through crises. That's part of life, and I think no, I think it's very exciting. It has never been as global as that. It has never been as innovative as we are. The world is changing at a pace which is incredible, and it's better to deal with inflation than unemployment. So I think that the fact that people have a job, I think it's important. I think the one I'm the most nervous is war. Humanity need peace, need people to work together. That's the one. If I feel something afraid of is war, because we have been in a world where there was no war. So and having war coming back, extremist and violence, that's not great for us as human. All the rest, I think it's good, but no, if we can come back to a world where there is peace, that would be great.
Amazing. We couldn't finish on a higher note. So thank you so much for your time today and for sharing your experience and your advice with all of us.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
See you soon.